What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Heel Report presented by Tar Heel 24/7 and our edition of Three Things after UNC's 41-6 victory over Richmond. I'm your host, intern Riken Fuller. Alongside me is Andrew Jones. And Andrew, this is one of those ones that we were going into, and it's like, are we going to learn a lot from this matchup? And I know I said for my staff picks, I was like, I don't think we're going to learn a lot. I just want to get immediately your take on what you think initially the outcome of this game, like what you thought it was going to be versus what we got back, and then I'm going to use that to lead into our first point here.
I find games like this very interesting because if you look at it from a very elementary level, meaning beginning with the line of scrimmage, it will sometimes reveal what a team really needs to work on. Sometimes a 41-6 score can completely camouflage the fact that North Carolina had 312 yards of offense. The fact that very late in the third quarter, this was a 20-3 game, and Richmond was moving the ball, and the Tar Heels had really been beaten up at the line of scrimmage for a while and they weren't getting the ball. They weren't able to hold on to the ball. They were punting pretty quickly. And there was a period there where Richmond ran 26 of 32 plays in the game and also had the ball for 15 minutes and I think it was 20 seconds compared to 1 minute and 4 seconds for Carolina. So that's in a 16-minute 34 span. They completely owned the game. But the Tar Heels' athletic ability, their football ability, and all those things took over, and that's how Bayer was able to get the 62-yard fumble return for a touchdown. Deont June had the explosive touchdown and all that, and I was able to sort of separate the game and get it out of hand and make it look on paper, at least from a distance, like a true blowout. But I don't think the coaching staff is going to comb over the film and say, we whipped them in every face, because they didn't.
Yeah.
There were a lot of things to work on, but it was a feel-good win for this team that they needed. There were enough positive things that eventually surfaced that you can look at and say, okay, this went well, and this went well. That's progress. And these other things that we got to work on, well, let's pin our ears back this week and really try to fix them, because if they don't get some of those things fixed, they're going to have a struggle beating most decent Power 4 teams.
Yeah, and AJ, I don't know if you were feeling the same way as me. I know it was probably that first drive of the third quarter when they had just recovered the onside kick. Richmond, you came out and they were a football length away from getting within 10 points, potentially getting within 10 points. I was sitting there, I was just thinking about some of the things we were going to talk about in Three Things, and I was like, oh boy, this play right here, the way if Carolina doesn't get a stop, this could determine kind of the mood and the attitude surrounding our Three Things, especially as it pertains to what Carolina fans might be thinking. But at the end of the day, it's a 41-6 victory for UNC, and that is in no small part because of Deont June. And I just want to kind of put this out there that there were only 3 players that registered a carry in this game: Deont June, Gio Lopez, Davion Goss. Goss had 5 attempts. Lopez had 11. Deont June had 14 attempts. So I'm kind of eating my words in a way that I did with or based off what I put in my staff pick, because I was like, I don't think we're going to get a lot of volume from any one player. But after today, if you want to talk about volume, Deont June, who last week and even this week on that unofficial depth chart they gave to us, wasn't even one of the 3 running backs listed.
He wasn't today.
Deont June, yeah, exactly. Deont June had 14 carries and blew out the second running back, who had only 5. So Deont was just a huge impact, 148 yards and 1 touchdown that kind of sealed it in the fourth quarter. I want to hear what you think about Deont June's performance and his rise in the depth chart the last couple of weeks.
I think there's 3 noteworthy prongs to this. One, the staff saw all of August and still didn't really know what they had. And I'm not criticizing them because of the newness, because you don't have the preseason NFL game, which is what most of these guys are used to, and certainly the head coach is. And you also don't know how the guys up front are going to block. Who hits the hole better? You could simulate full speed in scrimmage all you want in practice, and it's not a game. because you kind of seen a lot of stuff. You know this way the other side's a line of scrimmage smells. When you go in, and I'm being literal and no figurative, when you go into an actual game, you don't. And then they make adjustments and everything. And what we've seen is Damon June started August camp at the bottom of the depth chart. So he's jumped over everybody, and that's either because he's done a lot of good things to earn that, or other guys just weren't very good. And how come it just happened? Because he didn't play against TCU.
Yeah.
So what did he do? Was that an act of desperation? He was the 5th running back in the game last week at Charlotte. So the staff is learning how to learn the college player. The staff is learning how to evaluate the college player. They're behind on that. Jacob has said a couple times they're a month behind. I believe that they are. It's not a criticism. It's just kind of way things are. But I also believe that they possess the ability to speed up once they finally start to know who they are across the board. I asked Bill Belichick after the game today about the defensive interior. Do you think you know them more now than you did a couple weeks ago? And we could talk about that some other time, but his answer was yes. So now they know the running back room a little bit more. Benjamin Hall did not get in the game today, as far as I know. Okay, Caleb Hood started TCU. We kept hearing about him all fall camp, and we got an interview with him. He didn't do much. Davion Goss, who might be the most talented back in the room, still working through some stuff, I think. I think there's just clouds and those kinds of things he's kind of working through. But the one guy who's not, the one guy who hit liftoff on August 2nd and is still lifting off is Damon June. And it's not all that surprising to see him be the guy now, because I think he hits the hole harder than anybody else that we've seen. He makes a beeline through the hole, even if it's not a very big hole. Here's the thing. You don't have to have an offensive line that just mauls on every snap. They've got to have a crease for a back to get through. And if your backs aren't super quick getting through the hole, and then suddenly you bring this dude who's 5th into the game in Charlotte, 15-yard run, 19-yard run, my goodness, he's getting through the hole, and he's at the next level just like that. The second level, that is. He's the guy. He runs with a full head of steam. We got to talk to him for the first time today. His head's huge.
Yeah.
That helmet that covers that head is a missile going through a hole, and he breaks tackles. There's a little Javante there. There's a little Omarion there with some of the tackles that he's breaking. Don't laugh. No one knew who the hell Javante Williams was until his senior year when he played in the state championship game right here in this field and got his first offer after that game. Everyone knew who Marion was, but nobody knew who Javante was. At least people knew who Damon June was. And he likes to go by Juju, by the way, and all the players call him Juju. He does. So he hits the hole hard. He breaks tackles. He knows where he's going. I think he knows where the hole is. And the fact that his quickness is such that 50-yard run on the first possession, he was lined up in slot. That was not a conventional run. That's part of the things that I was taking notes on and watching hard today was how does this team run conventionally in short yardage situations? Because they were awful last week, non-existent against TCU. And the first time they had a 3rd and 1, they line them up at slot. I'm thinking, man, they don't trust the offensive line. But the hole was massive that he got through, and he darted like you want your running back to do, to turn their nose upfield and dart and having a 50-yard gain. He doesn't need to take it to the house every time. He doesn't need to have that kind of speed. For this offense to work, he needs to get to the next second level quickly. He needs to get through the hole, get to the second level. He can make people miss. And if he's earning a living on some big chunk plays and occasionally going 45 or 50 yards, I think they'll be very happy with that, obviously, because guess what? He showed us the 45-yarder to the house later on. So I like the way he runs. He reminds me a little bit of someone named Johnny White that played here a long time ago, because the hair kind of goes like it's rolling in the wind when he gets a full head of steam going. The physicality, a little bit like Javante, all those different guys, and he's his own back. And now there are expectations. Now he's clearly RB1. So how does he handle it? How does he handle moving forward? He's not leapfrogging anybody. They all want to leapfrog him. And Bill Belichick basically posed a challenge to him at the end of his press conference. They said, look, okay, now he's this guy. He's in this spot. This is new for him now. So how does he handle it moving forward? It's up to him. So that'll be something that we will monitor moving forward. But that was pretty impressive. 95 of his 148 yards came on 2 runs. But you know what? If you could pound it, and spring them off every once in a while, that ultimately gives your team the production it needs. And they got points on both possessions in which he had the long runs. They didn't get the touchdown on the 50-yarder. They ended up getting a field goal and the 45-yarder across the goal line. So very productive from him. it's encouraging moving forward because this is not a very good offensive line right now. So if you have a guy that hits the hole, hits the seam fast, that's going to make these guys look a little bit better.
Yeah, and AJ, if you really want to talk about identity, which has been kind of a big question for this offense over the last couple of weeks, especially after the TCU game, that was the biggest question. If you talk about identity, I think we saw identity, especially from the running back position, by their use of only 2 running backs. Because and especially for Davion Goss, his use in the red zone, he had a couple straight carries towards the goal line. I think you're looking for that kind of, dare I say, the Javonte Williams, Michael Carter of the past, that kind of like 1-2, this guy is going to break away for some big touchdowns. This guy's going to run you over at the goal line. I think that's what they're seeing, and I think that's what they're implementing. And to get some answers there, I think that's going to make a lot of Carolina fans I think that's going to make them happy to be like, hey, we're figuring things out, because after week 1, it was like one of those, where do we go from here? But even against Richmond, we're seeing some big stuff come out the wash here. And
the guy who started week 3 didn't play week 1. And they're just figuring out what they have now. These were 2 preseason games that they were able to win. And that's why I'm going to pump the brakes on being overly critical of certain things, because I think that these were giant lab experiments, essentially. And they're, okay, well, we know that this potion mixed with that potion works, so we're keeping that. These potions over here, my God, almost blew the building up. We're getting rid of that stuff. I think that they're in that process with a lot of position groups, but the running game with the running backs is super important, because if you cannot run the ball, you can't win. It's not like Gio's going to throw for 400. You don't have Drake or Sam back there. You don't have Brent Renner. You don't have TJ Yates. You don't have any of those guys. Marquise. You have to be able to run the ball effectively, move the chains some, and they were 6 for 11 on 3rd down today, which is a significant improvement over the first 2 games. And so you got to be able to run. And if you don't have a great offensive line, you got to figure out what running back works the best with that line. And what we've seen 3 weeks in, Damon June hits the hole the quickest. He gets through it the quickest with a full head of steam, and he's breaking tackles in the process. So I think he's the guy right now. Caleb Hood did play today. I don't think he got any touches. I have to look at the stat sheet, but this might be a 3-back room right now. But I wouldn't iron that out 100%. I wouldn't say it's etched in stone, because I still think we're going to see a tremendous amount of evolution with this team, in part because the staff is evolving. They're evolving in how they view college football, how they grade college football, how they evaluate college football. Everything is really in that process right now. So it's going to take a while. Bill said in the NFL it takes 4, 5, 6 games before you know your team. I'm not so sure this staff's going to know this team 100% by the 6th game. When they go to the 6th game, which I think is home against Virginia, it'll be interesting to see how well they know this club at that point. Hopefully, for everybody's sake, that they do. And maybe today gave them some answers that they wanted with respect to the ground game and the running backs, but they still got a lot of questions up front. I still think maybe there's some questions at tight end, although they threw to Jake Johnson a lot today, threw him 4 times. And there's still some things that need to be sorted out in other spots as well. But maybe today was a big step forward. And if they know who it is, then they could game plan with him more in mind than anybody else. So that could be the case moving forward, and we'll certainly find out next week in Orlando.
Yeah, and I like that you mentioned in Orlando, because like when you mentioned the kind of the first couple weeks feeling like a test, now you're back to Power 4 competition. It's like now we're going to get the real assessment of this team in Orlando. But I don't want to get ahead of myself with that game. We're going to have plenty of time
talking about that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, we got plenty of time. But I definitely do want to talk about, and going back to kind of my anecdote earlier, where I was sitting there watching, and I said that they were a football length away, and I said if they were to score, but it turns out if was definitely the right thought process there, because it was a 4th down stop against might I say, just gigantic quarterback. Dude is so big.
You were on the field. You were on the sideline shooting. How big was he?
I mean, I loved it when Jamie Collins said, like when he said in the press conference that Big Ben was big. but he wasn't that big. I think I agree. This guy was huge. Their backup was huge too. I was shocked. I'm like, where are they? What are they feeding these guys? But whatever. Nonetheless, they stop him. They stopped him pretty handedly. They had a couple chances. He tried to get in from the 1 yard or a couple yards out, but that was really that turning point in the game where I think there was a big sigh of relief, and it was like, okay, our defense, they've allowed, and this was coming off of that drive towards the end of the second half or the first half, excuse me, that looked like, I mean, a couple costly penalties and all that, but it looked like Richmond was starting to gain offensive traction, and then all of a sudden they literally hit that brick wall at the 1 yard line. So there's a lot of good things that come out of from the defensive line and the linebackers, especially just being able to stand up at that position. And then afterwards, just let that kind of snowball into forcing a couple turnovers and really taking over this game. So I just want to hear about your input on the defensive line, especially.
They moved backwards for 16 and a half out of 17 and a half minutes of the game. And in real life time, because halftime was in between, the defense was literally moving backwards for like an hour and 25 minutes. But they made the stop there, and they stopped the big kid. Richmond went at him with its best, and Carolina got the stop. And I think there was sort of a sigh of relief in the stadium. And even in the press box, it's like, okay, this thing was about to go 20-10. Last week, they were horrible in the second half at Charlotte, 59 points and just bad, ugly football. They then rebounded. They punted right away, but they ended up getting the ball back. They forced a fumble on the quarterback, and then they took it in from 34 yards out in 7 plays. The defense really helped the offense a lot tonight. This was not a 41-6 game. If you look at the stats, no way. The defense gave the offense the ball at the 25, 36, and 34, plus they got defensive touchdown. The defense was dominant. Richmond ended up with 199 yards. By the way, when Demond June had the 45-yard touchdown run, that was his last carry of the game. That gave him 148 yards. At that moment, Richmond had 131. He had 17 more yards than Richmond did. So the defense had a lot to do with that. I think that with the pressure from the ends, we're starting to see what they want. But I think the story here, and I know that Andrew Simpson makes plays and Kamari House makes plays. Thad Dixon's a stud. Really, a couple of really nice plays and a missed interception opportunity by Marcus Allen. But to me, we all know that the back seven's pretty decent. This defense is going to be what the front interior is. And we've seen progress the last 2 weeks. I know that Charlotte's bad, and Richmond's an FCS team. And Richmond has now scored, 20? They've scored 34 points or something on the season. So it's not a great offense. But the gap control, there were a couple plays when some people in the press box were saying, well, the linebackers, everything's just kind of like in lane control. It looked a little bit more organized because the guys up front were doing the job. But they have to have gap discipline, gap control is their number one responsibility. They don't have to make tackles, theoretically. Let the linebackers eat up all that stuff. And I thought that the pressure, some of the push that they got, their consistency against the run, their consistency when flexed out a little bit, I thought was pretty good. They're probably going to grade out well. UCF and everybody after that's going to be a much, much more difficult opponent. But these kids needed confidence. These kids need to see the teaching applied on the field and work. And they saw that for the most part at Charlotte, and they saw it for the most part today. Even those long drives, they didn't give up massive plays. They didn't give up any catastrophics. They kept everything in front, and they held them to 3 points during that period. Richmond kicked a field goal with 6 seconds left, which if I'm covering Richmond, I'm pounding the coach for doing something like that. You got to run to the play. You don't kick a field goal in a situation like that. So the Heels kept them out. They did their job. I think there's a lot to gain on film for the coaches saying, see, when you do it that way, it works. Because there's a lot of young dudes in that defensive interior. Got a lot of guys getting their first extended snaps of their career. So there's a ton of value in the game film when they get whipped, and there's a ton of value from the game film when they actually whip the dude in front of them. We saw a lot of that today. So the defense took a step forward because of that. And they're also, as Mekhi Bayer said after the game, their communication has been really good the last 2 games, but much better today. He said, look, that's the key. We were out of sorts. I'm paraphrasing. We were out of sorts against TCU. The communication was off. I mean, they were running all over the place. They looked like you turn the lights on and the freaking roaches scatter. I mean, that's the way they were defensively at times against TCU. Far more organized, far more communicative the last 2 weeks, and especially today. So that's the coaching staff getting to know the team, seeing stuff that goes wrong and getting it fixed. And I think that's going to be one of the strengths of this team is the staff fixing things moving forward, which means that this season is only 3 games old, and the Carolina fans that have already jumped off, and a lot of them have because this place had a crap load of empty seats today. Shame on you. You've got to let it play out. Let's see how this thing rolls through. Let's see how much the staff can identify all the good and then make it better, and identify the weaknesses and make it a little bit better, make it so-so. That's their job, and that's this team's mission. And I think that's the value of what they got out of today defensively, and when they got out as far as the Damon June, Bullet Gauss being the guys in the back room, in the running back room. Excuse me.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the Marcus Allen near pick, because literally 2 plays later, Caleb Cost had I believe it was 2 plays later. Caleb Cost had an interception that was called back because he it was defensive pass interference, which I was sitting right there in front of him, and it was such an underthrown ball. He didn't have to do anything to that defender. I don't know. I mean, so that's another, you know, it's on the same drive. So that's another turnover taken off the board for the defense. And that would have put them in a good situation where the offense was doing a good job.
Wasn't that Richmond's first down? That was Richmond's first down.
I believe it was. Yeah.
And then, so, I mean, they were in position maybe just to pull out right away, just kind of like they were at Charlotte when they missed the opportunity to put foot on throat. They did put foot on throat today, and that's okay. Caleb's going to learn from that. I mean, he was all over the field. Did a lot of things today, very active. Yep. So that's good because he was active after. He had 2 PIs, I think, but he was active after. He didn't let it get to him. They admitted, Kamori House said a couple of days after the TCU game, that the PI against Marcus Allen earned in that game that kind of flipped things, he said that actually affected. There was a residual effect that affected the defense there. Part of that was the poor communication they had. It was so bad, like there was no fanny smackers, there was no form of leadership out there because everything was just off kilter. Wasn't the case today. They had a couple of those things go against them, and they were able to rebound and be fine. I saw no residual effect of any of those negative things, other than they did drive. I think Richmond ended up driving a lot, but that wasn't because of that. I just think they were just getting beat, and that's going to happen in football. Richmond's got scholarship guys too.
Yeah, I'm with you, because one of the things I was noticing during the game was like there were a couple straight drives where it was like it felt like every pass downfield they were throwing like a pass interference. I was like, man, I don't want to think of this in a negative way. It's like, you know, you just hate to see against Richmond whenever they're trying to take a shot downfield. There's a flag out there, and you're like, man, do you really have to hold on? But I like the way you're framing it in a way where like you noticed, and one of them came that directly led into the goal line stand. Yeah. There was one over within the red zone. So
but right, I think get it on film. Now it's not gonna hurt him today.
Yeah,
it's better to get that on film now and get whatever he's doing fixed, and not have to try to deal with it next week when they go to Orlando, or 2 weeks after that when they play Clemson, or 2 weeks after that when they're in Berkeley. So get it on film now, especially in a game where you could afford to have it on film, because it's not going to cost you, and learn from it. That's the value in playing games like this. That's why people say, it was just such and such. No, there's a ton of learning and education that takes place in games like this from the staff and the players. And a lot of it, it's what the staff sees on film. They grade, they show the players, I got it now, coach.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you reframed it in that way, because like I was saying, I was thinking of that as a negative,
yeah.
but when
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, because like you said, in the TCU game, that kind of, you had that residual effect, like you said. But to see them not let it affect them in a way that kind of crept into the very essence of the defense. And other than that, like the coverage was good, because I mean, and that allowed, and good coverage allowed the them to get in on the quarterback a lot of the times. Like, and it was a lot of complimentary defense being played by that back seven, and then allowing the front four to just kind of do their thing. And I think at the end of the day, a couple of pass interferences that in a 35-point game, it's learning moments, and it doesn't really do anything. So yeah, I like reframing that. Like, I was originally thinking that as a negative, but I do enjoy.
Well, no, I
like
see what you're saying.
learning.
You shouldn't have to PI against them.
Yeah,
so that's the learning point I'm talking about. If it's going to happen in a game like this now.
This is the game.
And learn from it, but you won't really want it to happen ever. You shouldn't have to need to PI against Richmond, but it happened. And it happened in a situation that wasn't going to cost them. And now they got to move forward to Orlando, and they're going to have to take what happened today, connect it to last week and the 5 days before that, and see what kind of club they are moving forward.
Yeah, and then you came up with a couple. Those turnovers were huge in the second half. Definitely, you had the forced fumble taken back to the house. That was kind of like when you were like, okay, like this game is, you still had time on the clock, but this game is pretty much like they're not coming back from this. And then you had an interception that was probably foretold in the Iliad. I mean, that quarterback threw it like way late, and it was Jaden Patterson that came up with that interception. It was really, I mean, that was a good read for him, just being able to jump that. But at the end of the day, his pick. We're not going to talk about what happened directly after that, but we're definitely going to talk about what this now. And we kind of talked about what it means to have kind of that 2 running back system, but just for this defense especially, and then going back to that running back, just getting all the info we got from this game. What is that paving down the road for this team? I mean, what are we expecting to see as a natural progression for these position groups?
What this means is very clear. They have a lot of work to do on the offensive line. They lost William Boone to an injury. Trevion Green, who started last year, went the rest of the way. So they have a lot of work to do. This team does not run the ball well conventionally yet. I think that there's a ton of work to do with Gio Lopez. His receivers helped him out statistically today. There were balls that were not well thrown that receivers caught, so they helped him some. The conventional ground game and anything they have Gio do has to elevate significantly. And that's where games like this you can learn a lot. I thought that we saw the level where they are in those 2 areas. And don't go say Damon June ran for 148 yards. There were 2 runs were 95 yards. A lot of the conventional run stuff wasn't there. When Gio ended up scoring at the goal line, that sequence right there is a classic example I'm talking about. North Carolina, any solid Power 5 team should be able to look Richmond in the eye and say, we're coming right at you over right guard. You get it in the end zone. And so it took some time. But I still think that knowing now what they probably think is the right guy to get the ball into the red zones, by the way, is Damon June with Bullet, Davion Goss as well. I think that they might be better next week moving forward because of how they frame their ground attack. So that's why I'm not going to make any declarative statements yet, because I still think the framing and structure is going to continue to change. And it's going to change based on personnel. It's going to change based on all the things they've learned. So what today means is an awful lot more education from the staff, for the staff. And I thought Belichick was really good in the postgame. I thought he felt pretty good. And I think he's not because they won 41-6. He knows the score, but I don't think the score, as long as they win, is all that important to him. It's all the stuff that they're learning. It's okay. We're starting to really understand what our linebackers are, how they cover, and all those things. We know what we got at safety. We know what we got in some of these other groups. The tight ends had 1 target in the first 2 games. They had 5 today. 4 of them went to Jake Johnson. 1 went to Jordan Owens. Jake had 3 catches for 30 yards. They targeted him in the end zone, and Gio overthrew him. So they're looking to use the tight end to score. So you're seeing some things kind of broaden and slowly mushroom out based on what they see in these guys. And it's going to continue to move forward that way. So what this means is they're 2-1. So 2-1 is a lot better than anything other than 3-0. As bad as this team and its fan base felt 12 days ago, you're 2-1. You've given up 9 points in the last 2 games, no touchdowns. So progress is being made. And let's kind of remember TCU had 2 defensive touchdowns. So this team has now given up 43 points in 3 games to opposing offenses. Again, the last 2 teams aren't that good. We've seen North Carolina give up a lot more to bad opponents or weaker opponents. So the defense appears to be making some solid progress, and they're learning about the offense. I would not pick them at this moment to go into UCF and win, but I'm not sure I'd pick them to lose. I just don't know. We'll get a chance to talk to the guys this week and see what they learned about this performance. And again, I know this sounds like a cop-out to some people, but I don't know what this team is. And I don't think they 100% know what it is. By the time they play Virginia, toward the end of October, the last of October, Halloween, they're at Syracuse. The last Saturday in October is Virginia, 6 days earlier. I think at that point we're going to know, because they got to go to UCF. They host Clemson. That's bookended by open dates. They go to Cal on a Friday night, and then they come home and play UVA on Saturday. So I think that at that point we're going to know what they're all about. We're going to know if Deont June is for real or if this is just a flash and he's going to settle down. We're going to know if there's more to Gio Lopez's game that they can extract, or what you see is what you get. We're going to know if the tight ends can become weapons or not. We're going to know how they're going to decide to use Jordan Shipp. I asked Gio today about Jordan being I said, I know y'all don't like possession receiver as a term, but man, you can move the chains with Jordan Shipp. And he plays bigger than 6'2". Are there other ways they can use him? Kobe Pacer play a lot more today. Does Kobe become a guy that can maybe do some things he did previously before his injury a couple years ago? So I think there's so much more to learn whether they can or can't do things, and they'll know by UVA. And at that point, Carolina fans will know as well. So that's what this means. It's just one step in that direction.
And I do want to make a note kind of about this offense, and I just wanted to say I think there's a big, I don't know if it's like a stigma around when a Power 4 team plays an FCS team. There's an expectation as to how much you beat them by, how easy offense looks, how easy the game comes to you. And there were times where it was a struggle to move the ball, especially offensively. But and I wouldn't call this offense mega efficient today, but they really did get the job done. And I knew going into this one, you weren't going to see a bunch of wow plays. Like, they're not trying to take the top off this Richmond defense every play. There's really only one downfield shot I remember. It was towards the end of the second quarter, and they were trying to hit a receiver in the end zone on their last drive of the second quarter. But it was one of those games where it's like, okay, we're going to go out there and show that we have the physical advantage over this team. We're going to try to pound the rock. We're going to run these methodical drives. We're just going to, we're not trying to get it all in one play. We're trying to control some clock. And I think they did a good job of doing that for the most part. Obviously, it was made to look a lot better by a couple explosive runs by Deont June. But I going into this one, there might be some people who are like, man, why couldn't we throw a couple 50 yarders? Because you got to, that was how the last 2 games opened up, were huge passes, and you never really saw anything insane from this offense. So I think that's one of those things I want to note.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that was just one of the things I wanted to note, for people, especially for casual fans watching and people who might just be like, man,
I agree with you.
Why couldn't we do that?
Again, because this is about education. This is a preseason game that they knew they were going to win, and they did what they had to do to win. 312 yards against Richmond is highly concerning. In 3 games, this team, I think, has 737 yards of offense. That's highly concerning. They have not shown yet that they're a vertical football team, because it might not be there. I think that what you're seeing right now is a team that's learning how to walk before it even bothers learning how to run offensively. And they had some big plays, the 2 runs about we noted from Deont, but there's only been a handful of downfield throws that Gio's attempted. I don't know if that's his game. I don't know if the receivers are the right group for that game. We just don't know. There's a pass protection issue. There were a couple of times I think Gio's going to learn on film where he could have kept the ball and run, And one time he tried throwing to Caleb Hood in the end zone. You throw to a 5'9" guy in the corner of the end zone who's covered. Those are things he's going to learn. But look, take the win, take the 41-6 win, and move on and try to learn. But this offense has not shown an ability in the first 3 games. Should not give people optimism that they're going to do what the last 6 offenses did here in this school.
Yeah.
They ain't that. Now, they might become that. Information is going to allow them to become that. But right now, they're not vertical because they're not vertical. Right now, they're not wow because there's nothing wow about them. They're just trying to get from point A to point B. And my gosh, if you can get to C and D real fast too, take it. And that's okay because that's who they are right now. And it gives the staff an opportunity to massage the hell out of this thing to see what they are, like I said, by about the UVA game. If they don't make considerable improvement on base offense between now and UVA, they're going to have a very, very tough time in the back end of the schedule, the rest of the schedule.
Yeah. And to kind of like add a positive note to that too, though, while the red zone efficiency in terms of scoring touchdown may not have been like exactly what you were looking for, you had to settle for 3 a couple times, but I did like what I saw in terms of red zone play calling on the obviously on the drives that resulted in touchdowns. And as a cameraman down there, they were fooling me. I'm not going to lie to you on some of them misdirections within, on Gio's second touchdown throw, they had the man coming on the kind of the end around, and Gio fakes a little shuffle to him, and then just kind of stand almost like a Statue of Liberty-ish kind of esque. He just kind of like holds it, and then he turns around and he throws to Ship, and Ship is wide open. They had to hold him to prevent him from trying to score a touchdown. And that's the stuff I really like about this, what this offense is capable of. And I think that's an aspect of Gio's game that is very, very underrated, is his ability to sell that fake, because he did it on his first touchdown throw too.
I think it'll help him if he runs like in that throw to Caleb Hood. He just runs instead, because he's going to start pulling DBs up a little bit. So they did try some stuff. They're trying to figure who they are. They're not going to be able to do it on Tuesday at practice as much as they are on Saturday against anybody. So again, this was part of the lab experiments. They learned some stuff. Now they march forward, and they've got a much more difficult one next weekend.
Yeah, they were certainly making me look a little rusty with the camera skills over there with that misdirection. But, you
can get rust off.
Growing pains. Yeah, exactly. Right. There's a lot of different substances to do that. So we're growing here, and we're going to continue to grow. And with that, if you enjoyed this podcast, go ahead and drop a like, subscribe, hit that bell for our daily content so you know when that's going on.
Kudos to Reichen Fuller for his first 3 things. Fantastic.
I wasn't going to mention it.
Fantastic job. You're going to see a lot more Reichen moving forward. It's game reps, man. This is all about game reps, and we're giving Reichen game reps, and you're going to see a lot more of them. So tell them good job. We're going to move forward, and who knows who's doing it with me next week, you or Jacob. Whoever it is, it'll be after the game in the bounce house. I will be there. Looking forward to it. Noah will also be there. So and Kevin Roy. We'll have 3 people there in the bounce house. Looking forward to seeing what this staff does this week and what the product looks like next week.
Yeah, I'm super excited for that game.
So
there's a lot we're going to learn.
Thanks for stopping by, everybody. Click like, share, all that kind of stuff that Jacob says that I could never remember. And fantastic job, Reichen. Thumbs up. And we'll see you guys later. Thanks.
Take care.